Suppose I were to walk out on my front porch and you're walking by and I say, hey, I've got some good news for you. Some great news. Stop. You've been walking by all these days and you've been ignoring me, and I deserve to be acknowledged. I deserve to be noticed. I'm somebody. I'm important. And you just keep walking by. You're not even paying any attention to me. So I've got some good news for you. You don't have to go down in my basement. That's right. This is great news because you've been ignoring me all this time and you've not been giving me the proper respect that I deserve. It made me so angry, and I'm an angry person when I don't get honored and when my goodness is not respected. So I built this torture chamber down in my basement. And there's some icky, smelly vats down there, and there's some sharp knives, and it's kind of dark, and there's the furnace with flames growing, and there's these chains, and it's horrible and it's ugly. But you don't have to go down there. This is great news. You don't have to. I sent my son down there. And it was ugly. It was horrible. It was a passion of the Christ. It was bloody. But that satisfied my anger. And I'm not mad anymore, okay? I got all that taken care of. So it's all over. This is great news. So all you have to do, come on up here to my porch and just come on up here and tell my son thank you for the great thing he did for you. And come up and give us a hug, and we'll welcome you into our house, and we'll live up in the attic forever. And you can tell me how great I am, and you can thank my son for it. Wouldn't that be just wonderful news? Aren't you happy to know that? So what would you do? Would you just keep walking, or would you? Sorry, I've got to get to work. That's supposedly the good news.
So the question on the table tonight is faith reasonable, is faith good? Well, it depends on what you mean by faith. Often these debates and dialogues turn on what we mean by certain words. We only have our language to communicate with each other and transfer our thoughts between our brains. If we're not clear about that, then we're talking past each other. If faith means belief based on reason and evidence, then sure, faith is reasonable and good. But then why call it faith? Why not just call it reliable knowledge or demonstrable truth or science? But I think what most people mean, or at least they think this is what they mean, by faith is a belief without evidence, or where the evidence is weak and the evidence is not quite there for you, but the hope for the belief to be true is strong, it's high. As in Hebrews 11:1, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Now that's how I often thought of how most people receive the word or perceive the word faith to mean. But my friend and philosopher Peter Boghossian has convinced me that, in fact, most people treat faith as an actual method of knowing, an epistemology, a way of getting at the truth that they feel is reliable, or else why would they do it? The problem is, as Pete says, faith is when one assigns a higher confidence value to a belief than is warranted by the evidence. So this is the principle of proportionality. You should, that David Hume first articulated, you should proportion your belief to the amount of evidence for it. That is, you should assign the amount of confidence to a particular belief according to how much evidence there is for it. And so I think this is what we're talking about when we're talking about faith. The evidence isn't really quite there, but you're going to believe anyway. Because if that wasn't what it means, then we're talking about something else. We're talking about science or philosophy or something like that. So the question is it ever reasonable to extend your confidence in a belief beyond the warrant of the evidence?
A quick word from this video sponsor. In today's day and age, misinformation and news bias have become pervasive issues, and many people are being fed a single narrative where biased reporting often is clouding the truth. If you want to emancipate yourself from this, you should check out Ground News. Ground News is the world's first news comparison platform designed to combat misinformation and bias in media consumption. It offers users the ability to compare how different news outlets are covering the same story, providing a thorough overview of various perspectives on any given story. It also grants users the ability to see which news stories are being underreported by one side of the political spectrum, as well as providing you with a personalized dashboard with tools to track your own reading habits that will help you avoid echo chambers, as well as so many other features. And all the while you are obviously going to be fully informed about current events, both locally and internationally, from politics to finance to sports, culture, the environment, you name it. If you want to consume news without there being an underlying interest in telling you what to think, but rather just giving you the full story, you should visit Ground News today by clicking the link in the description, which automatically grants you a 15% discount on all subscriptions.
The issue is that there's no reason for us to have this denominational language. If we are in the business of simply describing transcendent experience, how we have them, what they're like, what is reasonable to conclude on their basis. Neurochemistry is a part of that, but I agree with you, it does not subsume the whole conversation. If we are in that business, there is no room for a Buddhist version of it, a Christian version of it, in the same way that there's no room for Christian physics. I mean, the Christians invented physics, but physics, because it was a real domain of inquiry, floated free of its Christian roots. There's no such thing as American science versus Japanese science. I mean, science is science because it is the one mode of discourse where we are rigorously honest with ourselves. Everyone is in the business of proving everyone else wrong. You can actually win points for proving yourself wrong in science. This doesn't happen in religion, and it should. And if it did, it would have a winnowing effect that would be catastrophic for the religious enterprise, and then we would be left with mystical scientists.
I don't want to take away anybody's identity. I care about what's true, right? So if you're making a claim, a truth claim, then I want to know what's your evidence. Is it really true? If you're saying, well, it's true for me, okay, fine. But what are the consequences of this? This is why I'm a supporter of Ayaan Hirsi Ali. This is not just interesting cultural differences between Muslims in Somalia and Americans. It's not. They're generally mutilating girls or marrying them off. And these arranged marriage. This is terrible. This is not good for women, and we have to be able to stand up and say that it's wrong. It's not as good. It's less progressive in that sense. So, on one hand, yes, I respect other people's cultures, but not if they're hurting people. If they're killing people, if these kinds of things that's a problem. I distrust people who know so well what God wants them to do because I notice that it always coincides with their desires.
What we don't like is the dominant religion trying to force its beliefs on everybody else that doesn't happen to believe that. We believe in freedom of religion. It's very simple.